Love handles are the worst. Seriously, nothing changes your physique for the worse more than love handles. It throws off your shoulder to waist ratio, which just throws off the whole illusion of potentially looking leaner and more muscular. If you can fix the love handle issue, you will look better. And when you look in the mirror, you'll feel a heck of a lot better about yourself. It's not just crazy random internet marketing stuff. It's reality. If you feel good about how you look because you have less love handles, you're gonna feel better in general. So I've got 8 stellar ways to actually strategically and scientifically at least reduce some of the love handles. This isn't gonna be total nonsense, it's gonna be reality. Without further ado, let's get to the stuff. This first one is actually the most important. Okay, now a lot of times we hear that you cannot lose body fat in one specific area. Like people will tell you it's impossible. You can't site reduce or spot reduce. Okay, I call nonsense on that. Okay, the reality is there are studies that prove otherwise. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain this study and then I'll loop around and what the actual tip is. Okay, there was a study that was published in the American Journal of Physiology that found when subjects were in a fasted state and then worked out, they had full body lipolysis, which means that they were burning fat throughout their whole body. However, they burned more near the area that was active. Okay, so when a subject is fasted, meaning they're working out on an empty stomach, they will burn more fat around the area that is actually active. And it has to do with increases in blood flow and increase in thermogenesis, increase in actual body heat in that area. So the tip is to train fasted no matter what, okay? It will allow you to burn more fat. And if you're moving your core, if you're doing battle ropes, if you're actually fasted and you're moving the abdominal cavity, if you're moving those muscles, you're moving the rectus abdominis, you're moving the obliques, you're going to burn more fat in that area, and science proves it, despite what people will say, okay? That leads me into tip number 2. Have apple cider vinegar before your fasted workout. You see, fasting burns visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that we don't see. However, there is an upregulation of something known as the MIR133A gene. Okay, what this means is that the fat that is unsightly, like the love handle fat, gets moved over to become visceral fat, okay? That gene migrates the unsightly fat to visceral fat, and that sounds bad at first, okay? You go from unsightly to visceral fat, which is not good either. But then once you're fasting, that visceral fat is closer to the liver. So the visceral fat gets burned a lot easier. So what happens is this gene that is activated from fasting allows that fat to turn into visceral fat, which therefore gets burned a lot easier. So where does the ACV come in? The apple cider vinegar upregulates uncoupling protein 1. What this means is that uncoupling protein 1 increases thermogenesis. That is more body heat, more core body temperature, higher core body temperature in a specific area. So apple cider vinegar increases thermogenesis. Now, if we couple that with a workout where we're moving our core, we have more body temperature in those specific muscles, therefore allowing more fat burning to occur in that given area. Now, maybe this isn't hugely dramatic, but it's enough to make me want to actually move my core. Okay, the next one is going to be consuming more protein, and it sounds vague and it sounds generic, but the reality is it's true. 35%, or roughly thereabouts, is how many percent of the calories we burn from protein when we eat it, just in digestion. So what that means is 35% of the calories from protein are burned up just in the mechanical digestion and the absorption of protein. There was one study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that found that simply increasing your protein intake to 30% of your overall daily calories resulted in approximately a 441 calorie decrease in terms of your overall consumption. So what I would recommend you do is set a number like 5%. Okay? Increase your protein 5% and just strategically do that. Don't eyeball it, don't guess it, log it, and trust me, you will see a difference. The next one is increasing your levels of DIM. What the heck does that mean? Okay, DIM sounds crazy, it sounds fancy, it stands for diindolylmethane, but trust me, it's not some crazy drug or crazy supplement. All it is something that is derived from indole-3-carbinol, which is derived from cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, baby kale, bok choy, cabbage, all those things, okay? We need to increase our consumption of that dramatically. Why? Because diindolylmethane allows our body to process estrogen. If males particularly have too much estrogen, it causes us to store a bunch of water in our love handles. Okay, so a lot of what we see in love handles is actually water, not just fat. But there's a secondary effect. If we have too much estrogen, that estrogen will allow more fat cells to accumulate. Okay, it's the aromatization process. More estrogen equals more fat. It's a vicious circle. And then more fat equals more estrogen equals more fat. We need to nip that at the bud. So diindolylmethane actually stops adipogenesis. It stops new fat cells from forming, specifically in the areas where estrogen would normally deposit it, our love handles. Okay, so we need to make sure we eat a lot of cruciferous, whatever it may be, broccoli, DIM, kale, cauliflower, you name it, okay? Or you can take supplements. The next thing, number 5, upper body high intensity interval training. Okay, high intensity interval training already burns a lot of fat. Okay, that's a huge given. But things like battle ropes, where we're aggressively doing high intensity interval training, definitely improve fat burning, specifically around the area. Now here's what's interesting. The Brazilian Journal of Physical Therapy published a study that found that you had a greater fat burning effect and a greater heart rate increase and a greater sympathetic nervous system response doing upper body HIIT than you did doing lower body HIIT. And it has to do with the fact that your heart has to work harder to push all the blood through less our arteries and capillaries and everything in our arms than it does our lower body. There's more peripheral resistance. Simply put, the heart has to work harder. Your heart rate gets higher. Your sympathetic nervous system activates more. You burn more fat. But then combine that, again, with the fact that spot reduction is real, we have more heart rate, more fat burning, more thermogenesis by moving our upper body, which therefore also means we're going to burn more fat there too, in addition to just getting a higher heart rate and better fat burning result overall. Okay? So make sure you don't skip out on the battle ropes, on the medicine ball tosses, things like that, the ball slams, everything that incorporates that core and upper body to get the heart rate up. Number 6 is get the lymphatic system moving. And what the heck am I talking about here? The lymph system is what moves lymphatic fluid. But people don't really think about the fact that fat, believe it or not, is moved and transported through our lymph system. Here's an interesting fun fact. Our lymph system does not have a heart to move lymph. Our blood vessels, everything like that, has a heart to propel blood, right? Our lymph system does not. Our lymph system requires movement from us, from our muscles, to get the lymph to move. So if we're not moving, the lymph isn't moving and the fat isn't moving. So how do you improve the lymphatic system? How do you get more blood, or get more lymph mobilized in that case? You do things like foam rolling, okay? It drains the lymph, it gets it moving. You do things like stretching, you do things like intense mobility work. Have you ever noticed that when you do a mobility day, you somehow end up looking leaner the next day? Yeah, it's because not only are you more aligned and probably standing properly and you just look leaner, but you very likely mobilized more fat simply by getting the lymph system moving. So foam roll, do it frequently. Go through the motions where you're actually stretching and going through full range of motion to get the lymphatic system going, and also alternate upper and lower body movements to keep the lymph system pumping. Number 7, none of you guys are gonna like. The reality is you have to reduce your alcohol consumption. You just have to, okay? Here's what happens. When we consume alcohol, it gets converted into something known as acetaldehyde. Okay, this acetaldehyde is very toxic to the body. And what happens is the liver prioritizes the metabolism of this acetaldehyde. What that means is sugar, carbs, all that stuff takes a back seat to overall ethanol and alcohol processing. Basically, the liver says, this is so toxic, I need to take care of it now. Everything else can wait, which means that you have a higher likelihood of storing fat. Now, additionally, to add insult to injury, the Journal of Toxicology published a study that showed that subjects that consumed ethanol, okay, alcohol, had a significantly higher increase of androgen conversion or androgen aromatization. Basically, what that means is the male-like properties that make us guys ended up turning into estrogen significantly more if alcohol was involved. Yep, there was a hepatic aromatization. So when we consumed alcohol, our body took our male-like properties and feminized them, basically turned it into estrogen. And alcohol makes that so much worse. So just scrap it, or scrap it a couple days per week so you at least reduce the impact. Last but not least, I don't care if you're keto fasting, whatever you're doing, reduce your fructose consumption. Okay? Fructose coming from fruit. I love fruit, okay? We all do, but the fact is we can't overdo it. Our bodies can only handle so many grams of fructose. Fructose has to be metabolized within the liver. It doesn't get stored anywhere else. It gets stored in the liver. So if we overdo the fructose, like over 35 or 40 grams at one sitting, it immediately gets deposited. And guess where it gets deposited? More than likely, it leaves the liver and it deposits in an area close to the liver because it's convenient. That's why we store so much around here, okay? So definitely reduce the fructose consumption. Keep it under 20 grams per day, no matter what kind of diet you're doing. Fructose, fruit, and if you eat the berries, at least they're lower fructose content. So if you're gonna choose a fruit, choose berries. Don't go with the mangoes or the high sugar bananas or anything like that. So I hope this gave you some honest tips. Tips that are really gonna change how your love handles look, or lack thereof of love handles, right? If you like videos like this and you have future ideas on things like, 5 top or 5 ways to do XYZ, put them down in the comment section. I love reading those, and it's how I get ideas for future videos. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you soon.